very, very big fan.
Well, thank you very much.
Me too. I've seen your background, your room like so many times.
Yes, I talk to my friends. I will talk to Scott. Scott, I really cannot believe. It's really. We'll meet him. The video. I will give you seal.
Well, hopefully I do a good job.
You
Yes.
always do. Talk to Scott. Yeah, I cannot believe neither. I'm going live now, and then I need to pause the YouTube play and then come back to the. Okay. Now we're live. Hi everyone, welcome to Wenjie Broadcasting. Today is October the 17th, 2024. I have a very special guest today, Scott Ritter. Scott is the former United Marine Intelligence Officer and a former UN Special Commission Weapons Inspector, right? And also he's the best commentator on geopolitics. And both me and Wei, my co-host, he's big fans. Hi, Scott. Welcome.
Well, hello. Thanks for having me. How are you guys doing today?
We're doing good. We're excited, just looking forward to this talk.
I am too.
And let me introduce Wei. He's my dear friend and he's my co-host. He lives in Russia. He has been living in Russia for over 30 years. So he has a in-depth knowledge about Russia and geopolitics too. Hi, Wei.
Hi, I am big fan of Scott Ritter. I am feeling very lucky. Very lucky.
Well, Wei told me he doesn't speak English, but I feel like he speaks better English than me.
Yes, right now I'm very sorry. I didn't learn English before.
Я думаю, что он говорит по-английски лучше, чем мои русский.
Вау! Я могу с тобой говорить по-русски.
Нет. Я не говорю. Я очень плохо. No. I said I think he speaks English better than I speak Russian, and then he said that I speak Russian, but I don't.
Well, I'll ask my friend to do the subtitle for me after this
Okay.
live stream. I have several things to ask Scott, but today, like this morning, I just saw an unconfirmed reports on the web and said Hamas leader Sinwar was assassinated. So I wanted to ask Scott first about even if this report is confirmed, is there any effects on the situation of Middle East?
I think we need to, when we evaluate information like this, let's assume that it's true, that Yahya Sinwar has in fact been killed. This isn't the first time that a leader of a resistance group, either Hamas, Hezbollah, has been killed by the Israelis. One needs to only remember that Hassan Nasrallah was killed, the longtime Hezbollah leader. There are two ways to assess this. One is from a political standpoint. When people like Hassan Nasrallah or Yahya Sinwar become well-known political figures, their loss is going to be felt, because politics is about human interaction. It's about developing relationships. It's about perceptions. And these perceptions are all built around an individual, a named individual who has a personality, who has traits that people find attractive. And so when you kill somebody of this stature, this creates a political problem for the organizations that these people led. So Hassan Nasrallah's death was a significant political problem for Hezbollah, and Sinwar's death, if confirmed, will be a significant political problem for Hamas, because naming a successor is easy. But naming a successor who will be able to capture the imagination of their respective constituents is more difficult. This is something that takes time, it takes experience, etc. So, on the one hand, politically, this is a major blow against Hamas. But Hamas is more than a political organization. It's actually better known to be a resistance organization. Just like Hezbollah is a resistance organization. And resistance organizations are designed to be very resilient. They're based around ideology and support for ideology as opposed to support for an individual. And the ideology of Hamas is resistance to the furtherance of the creation of a Palestinian state. And the killing of Mr. Sinwar will not at all affect this. In fact, if anything, it will strengthen it, because now he is a martyr. He has become a symbol of resistance. His sacrifice will be put forward as an example for others. Israel has spent some time portraying this man as a coward who is hiding behind hostages underground, running away from the Israelis. It appears he died with a weapon in his hand, fighting the Israelis above ground. No innocent people surrounding him. And this is going to be devastating for Israel, because Sinwar's death, if confirmed, and the manner of his death, if confirmed, will be a rallying cry for Hamas. One thing is certain: in a month's time, people will not be focused on the death of Sinwar. He will be a martyr. He will be a motivational concept. But the mourning will be past and people will have moved on. Israelis will still be dying in Gaza. The occupation will still be resisted. Hamas will still remain undefeated. This is the reality that Israel has to deal with. They will have their moment. They will have headlines. There will be people who will cheer this event. But in a month's time, they'll be returning to crying about the dead Israelis, the wounded Israelis, the fact that this war isn't over, that this war will never end until Israel agrees to recognize a Palestinian state.
Okay, thank you for answering my questions. Do you have question for Scott?
Yes, I have question. But I'm sorry, Scott. I need to speak in Chinese. Translate Wen Jie.
You can speak Russian.
No, I can speak Russian. I can speak Russian.
Китайский язык лучше.
Хорошо. 就是这个现在全世界啊，已经对老百姓没有这种是对核战应对的这种教育了，就是不教人如果发生核战争的情况下，怎么去躲避啊，怎么去防御啊，就是核战争发生之后，怎么去消除体内的这个核辐射，吃什么药，怎么做。这个我想请那个 Scott 啊，帮助我们介绍一下。然后呢，如果他能介绍这个，我们上哪里去看一下这些信息，那就更好了。这是一个问题，你先问一下的。
Scott, we said since now, there's limited education on how to prevent and protect ourselves from a nuclear war. So he would like your opinion on that, where are the safe place, and is there medications to help us to prevent the radiation, or if there's any information source that we can refer to find out this kind of knowledge.
I have personal opinions on this, not professional opinions.
Mhm.
And I don't want to insult anybody with my answer,
Mhm.
but you cannot prepare for a nuclear war. It's impossible. You're going to die. You'll either die immediately or you'll die eventually. But you will die a death that will be miserable, either of starvation, of disease, or of radiation poisoning. There are people who believe, for instance, that you should stock up on potassium iodine, Ki pills, that these pills will somehow protect you against um, the poison of radiation. But that's not the case. The potassium iodine protects your thyroid against specific kinds of radiation that attacks the thyroid. But it won't protect you from the radiation that comes from a nuclear attack. It may be useful if you live near a nuclear power plant, if you live near sources of radiation that are emitted over time. But the kinds of radiation that will be emitted during a nuclear attack, the method of exposure, these pills will have no value whatsoever. There's people who say stock up on water, stock up on potassium, on pedalite, so that you can recharge your electrolytes. That's fine. But unless you have an infinite amount of water, nuclear winter and the radiation is going to last for thousands of years. Nuclear winter is going to last 6 to 10 years. You're not going to make it. You're going to die. So it doesn't matter. So rather than focusing on how to survive a nuclear war, I would encourage everybody to focus on preventing a nuclear war. That is where you make your money. That is where you can have results that are meaningful. Because once there's a nuclear conflict, it's too late. A general nuclear war between the United States and Russia, a general nuclear war between the United States and China, will kill hundreds of millions, if not billions, of people immediately. And then almost everybody else is going to die a lingering death. We should focus on this reality. You see, the concept of preparing to survive a nuclear war creates the notion of hope. I could survive this. Maybe it won't be as bad as everybody says it will be. There will be life after nuclear war. No, there won't. You won't survive it. Your death will be horrible, and there will be no life after nuclear war. And once you accept this reality, then you realize that you must fight now for your life, that you must struggle now to prevent a nuclear war by holding your officials accountable for what is done, to make sure that they understand that you view your life as precious, not to be bartered away in a game of geopolitical chess. That's my take on it. I know there's people out there who are big on survivalism. They have their weapons and their bullets and their canned food and their water and their radiation tablets. They'll be dead. Nothing they have will save them. That's my opinion.
I agree with you on this. Actually, because when I heard Wei, he used to make a program and he talked about there's a like huge Russian nuclear bomb. It's called SAR. It's like 1,500 times, than the big boy. Like it's just it's a very powerful weapon, and I don't think anyone will survive that.
When a nuclear bomb, let's talk about what we call city killers, 1 megaton bomb. When it explodes at a temperature that's hotter than the sun. We're talking 180, 190 million degrees. So for literally a mile, nothing will live. Nothing will exist. Buildings will vaporize. Nothing will survive this intact. But then for 10 miles out further, everything dies anyways from flame. Everything will catch fire. The shock wave and the flame wave will come in and melt everything and kill everything. And then beyond that, you get the radioactive fires, you get the residual effects. You'll have fires spreading out for even 20 miles beyond that. The radiation will kill everything immediately. And if people want to know what it's like to die of radiation exposure, watch the HBO show Chernobyl. Look at the fate of the Soviet firefighters that responded and how literally their bodies melted from the inside out. Their organs literally lost all cellular structure, and they literally dissolved from the inside out. That's what's going to happen to you. And there won't be a hospital with painkillers to try to alleviate your suffering. You'll be curled up in a fetal position in the ruins of what was your house, dying of the most excruciating pain you've ever felt in your entire life. That's what's going to happen. And maybe you'll have the chance to watch your children die that way, and your wife die, and the people you love die before you die. So this is the worst possible fate that can befall people. So why not do everything possible before a nuclear war to prevent a nuclear war?
Mm-hmm. Do you have any suggestion like how to prevent, like for us normal people can help this, to prevent a nuclear war?
By making it one of your top priorities in life. I mean, let's just be honest and reflect on, how we live and what we prioritize, the things we give priority to. Mm-hmm. If I told you, for instance, if I told somebody that you have a disease that's going to kill you, but you can extend your life by changing the way you eat, by exercising, by taking better care of yourself. You'd be amazed how people suddenly find the time to go to the gym, how people find the time to go for walks, how they find the time to pay closer attention to what they eat, to prepare foods at home, etc. We are willing to make adjustments in our life to deal with things that we deem to be existential, to impact our quality of life, etc. Nuclear war will kill you in the most horrible way possible. Why aren't you adjusting your life to prevent nuclear war? So the first thing you have to do is acknowledge that this is one of your top priorities. Now what you do is you find other people and you get them to acknowledge it as well. What you're doing is building a constituency of people who are concerned about an issue. And in the United States, such constituencies have political power because we vote. And what we can do is insist that the people who want our vote adopt policies that meet our priorities. There's a reason why the Second Amendment is such a big issue, because there's so many Americans who say this is a big issue for me. There's a reason why abortion is such a big issue politically. There's so many Americans who believe that this is an important issue. And I'm not saying one way or the other, because on Second Amendment, there are people who want more gun control. There's people who don't want any gun control. Each one of them has said, this is an important issue for me. I'm going to make this politically viable by throwing my weight behind it and getting other people to do so well. The same thing with abortion, the same thing with immigration. These are important issues that every politician is talking about. Why? Because that's where the votes are. How many people have you heard talk about nuclear war in this last election? Donald Trump mentions it briefly. But Kamala Harris, no. Jill Stein, a little bit. But of the two major candidates, they spend more time talking about gun control, abortion, and immigration, about the economy, than they do about preventing a nuclear war. Gun control, abortion, immigration, the economy, these are all important issues, but none of them are going to result in the world being destroyed in the next 6 months. A nuclear war can end the world today. It takes 72 minutes from start to finish for the world to end. 72 minutes. And so what we need to do is say, this is the existential issue of our time. It's the most important issue out there. And therefore, I being the individual, am going to do what I can to make sure that we work to prevent nuclear war. We get engaged in policies. There's a lot of people out there who support Ukraine in this conflict here in the United States without understanding why they support Ukraine. They say, I support Ukraine because Vladimir Putin's bad. But they don't know anything about Vladimir Putin. They don't know anything about Russia, and they don't make any effort to learn anything about Vladimir Putin or Russia. They just accept at face value this notion, and they support Ukraine without understanding that supporting Ukraine is a poison pill. It's a suicide pill, because if we take our support of Ukraine to the bitter end, it means that we will have to fight Russia. And if we fight Russia, this is an existential struggle that will end in a nuclear war. Do we want to commit national suicide? Do we want to sacrifice our families for Ukraine? That's a fundamental question. And when you ask it that way, most Americans will say, no, we don't. Then what are you doing to ensure that this Ukrainian conflict doesn't become an existential conflict between the United States and Russia? And we can ask similar questions about other issues. We have to empower ourselves with knowledge and information. We have to become better informed about the world we live in, so that we can better hold to account the people whom we elect to higher office. If we are ignorant about Russia, then the people we elect don't have to try very hard to confuse us about Russia, because we will believe anything they tell us about Russia. But if we've empowered ourselves with knowledge and information, we can push back with facts. And then if they don't respond adequately, we can vote them out of office. There's a big election coming up on November 5th. This is the chance for Americans to make their voices heard, to say, we will not accept the status quo. We will not accept business as usual, because the status quo and business as usual is leading us towards nuclear war. We all almost died on September 14th of this year. I don't know how many Americans or even people around the world understand. Had Joe Biden signed off on the piece of paper that Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, brought to him in a meeting at the White House, we'd all probably be dead, because that signature would have authorized Ukraine to use American and British-made weapons to strike deep inside Russia, which would have prompted a Russian response, not just against Ukraine, but against us, against the British, against NATO, which would have triggered a larger conflict that inevitably ends with a general nuclear exchange where all life on the planet ends in 72 minutes. So what can we do? First thing we have to do is care. The first thing we have to do is care. How many Americans wake up every morning saying the biggest danger I face is the threat of nuclear war? Not too many. We need Americans to start understanding how dangerous this is, how existentially dangerous this is, and that if we don't do something to change the direction our country's headed on, that's the inevitability. That is what is going to happen.
Yeah, I totally agree. And then I think that's why, our conversation like this, talking in different social media platforms to wake people up is so important. And Wei used to talk to me. He said by Russian law, Russia already has the the right to attack the United States, because United States is providing weapons to Ukraine, and Ukraine used it to attack Russia. By Russian law, it's already, it's just Putin is refrained from attacking United States, but how much, how further United States is going to push that way, so Russia will has to respond. I think that is a very big question too.
Well, the only one that can answer this question is Russia. How much patience can Vladimir Putin have? What constitutes an existential threat to Russia? At what point in time does Russia say, we can't accept anything more? I mean, NATO has already attacked Russia through Kursk, using the Ukrainian army as a proxy. So we already have NATO invading Russia. NATO has attacked Russia using Storm Shadow missiles, British, Scalp, French, ATACMS, HIMARS, American weapons. NATO's already attacking Russia using Ukraine as a proxy. They use NATO intelligence, they use NATO logistics, they use NATO communications, and NATO command. NATO has planned many of these attacks. So as we sit here today, NATO is at war with Russia.
Yes.
But Russia has decided not to view it that way. And I think one of the main reasons is nothing NATO has done so far represents an existential threat to Russia. And moreover, Russia is winning this war. And so Russia believes that it continues on this trajectory, victory will be theirs regardless of what NATO does. But this is a very, very dangerous situation that exists. And it's one that, as an American, we would never tolerate. We would never tolerate Russia coming to Mexico and empowering the drug cartels to launch attacks against the United States using Russian weapons. We would never tolerate this. Why does Russia tolerate it? Because they have a better desire to live in peace with the rest of the world than we do. Russia's first option is never war. War is always the last option. But we misinterpret this as weakness. And so the more Russia shows tolerance, the more we think Russia is weak and that they're bluffing. And this is where Russophobia becomes such a big problem. The ignorance of Americans about Russia and the unwillingness to learn about Russia because we are told that Russia is bad, that Putin is bad. The more Americans learn about Russia, the deeper the understanding they will have about the reality of Russia, and the more they'll recognize the flaws in American policy. But it's difficult to learn about Russia when the very process of asking questions or traveling there is attacked by the government, in some cases criminalized by the government. And so we remain ignorant. From ignorance comes fear, fear of the unknown, fear of that which you don't understand. And fear is exploited by political leaders to, allow policies to happen that otherwise would be challenged. But people don't challenge it because they're afraid, and they're afraid because they're ignorant. So a critical aspect to all of this is Americans need to learn more about Russia. They need to study Russia. They need to study Russia with an open mind. And if possible, they need to visit Russia. They need to see Russia firsthand. They need to meet the Russian people. They need to talk with the Russian people. And as soon as they do that, they'll realize that the Russian people are not their enemy, that Russia is not a threat to them, that actually the best course of action would be one that encouraged friendship between our peoples, not conflict between our peoples.
Yeah, I agree. I think the friendship between Russian, people, and from anywhere from the world, Russian and United States and China, as long as we have friendship, maybe the war is less likely to break out.
I agree.
I have a second question.
What's the second question?
Yes. Thank you very much, Scott. 你问一下啊，就说这个俄罗斯新有的这个就是导弹系统 S-500，这个 Scott 他作为专家，他评估这个 S-500在如果核战争发生，它会有两次导弹攻击。第一次导弹攻击呢，它是攻击这个，比如说攻击俄罗斯的核导弹基地。那俄罗斯这个 S-500，在 Scott 看来，在 Scott 看，它能够拦截多少的第一轮导弹？
Okay, let me try to translate. We want to ask you, there's a new nuclear missile system. It's called S-500 in Russia. And he said for a nuclear attack, there are usually like 2 rounds. The first round is to attack the nuclear base, right? And then he wants to know, like, the percentage of the nuclear attack the S-500 can intercept. Do you know that?
Well, in order for me to answer that question, I'd have to know the specific operational parameters of the S-500. This is a relatively new system, and I would imagine that the Russians are keeping its precise performance characteristics secret. So it's difficult to be precise about this, but what I would say is that the S-500 could probably have good success in shooting down missiles like the Minuteman III, that is the American ground-based intercontinental ballistic missile. I would say that the S-500 is probably optimized for that. But what happens when you have a Trident missile fired from a submarine off the coast of Russia that doesn't go into your traditional ballistic drive, but it has a flattened profile, comes in below radars, isn't detected until the very end, and then it deploys a dozen warheads independently. The S-500 can't defend against this. Neither can the S-400. And this is the danger of ballistic missile defense. I just want to point out that we've done this before. Back in the 1960s and 1970s, we had an arms race. And what we found is that for every offensive weapon, we would try to build a defensive weapon, that a new offensive weapon would be built that overcomes it, and that eventually we would run out of money because you can't just build and deploy these systems. So that's where we said there won't be any missile defenses. So we're dealing with mutually assured destruction. So that if I attack you, you can't defend against me. You'll attack me. I can't defend against you, and we all die. Therefore, let's not attack each other. Missile defense creates an artificial sense of security. There is no defense against general nuclear war. The number of missiles that will be coming your way, the number of warheads, decoys, etc., cannot be defended against. It's impossible to defend against the totality of it. And to try and build defenses just creates a false sense of security, to make you believe that since I can defend against a limited nuclear war, if I choose only to use limited nuclear weapons against my enemy, I can contain this. There's no such thing as a limited nuclear war. Once a nuclear war begins, every expert believes that it will immediately spiral out of control and end up as a general nuclear exchange. And there's nothing that can defend against that, whether it be the S-500 or any missile defense system the United States will seek to deploy.
So a nuclear war will be a disaster, like for Russia and United States, right?
100%, 100%.
So,
and again, Americans just reflect on what we're saying here. How many people have taken vacations to New York City and looked up at wonder at the Empire State Building before 9/11, looked up at wonder at the World Trade Center, walked Times Square, walked Central Park, gone to the museums with all of the history? You go to Washington, D.C., and you see the various buildings that comprise the seat of the government, the Smithsonian, the Washington Monument, the Jefferson Monument, the Lincoln Monument. These are amazing things. And we have cities full of this in the United States. All of this would be gone. All of this would be gone. All that history eliminated, all that humanity, all that civilization eliminated. Russia, could you imagine losing the Kremlin? I'm not talking about the government. I'm talking about the structures, the buildings, the iconic, St. Basil's Cathedral there in Red Square, losing this, losing, the Bolshoi Theater. Go to St. Petersburg, you're losing the Admiralty buildings, you're losing the Hermitage, you're losing all of this history, this wonderful history, and it extends throughout Russia. Go to Novosibirsk, the largest opera house in Russia is there in Novosibirsk. You would lose this. The history would lose. China, go to Beijing. Look at what be lost there. The Forbidden City. This history that's there. And then why do we want to put this at risk? All the things that we save up our money to do, to places we want to visit, the wonders we want to see, the glory we want to experience. We build nuclear weapons to destroy this, and you can't rebuild because it will be evaporated, and what's not evaporated will be contaminated so that humans cannot touch it for thousands of years, and we'll all be dead by then. So we need to reflect on that we're talking about not just killing people. Man, we kill people all the time. Look at how many people are dying in Gaza. Look how many people are dying. We're talking about killing civilization. We're talking about killing humanity. Everything we have stood for, everything we have created, all of the history that we have accumulated would be gone in a flash of an instant, 72 minutes. So people need to reflect on that and what we're talking about here. This isn't a game. This isn't theory. This isn't academics. This is reality. Everything that you hold important to your family, your community, your country will be gone. Gone.
So that's really our priority to prevent the World War III and the nuclear war.
I believe so.
Well, I have another question. Like you just said, United States support for Ukraine is kind of suicidal. How about United States support for Israel, like in the Middle East?
It's a different kind of suicide. There's different ways to kill yourself. You can jump off a building, jump off a bridge, or let's say you're a diabetic, you just eat sugar. There'll be a longer death, a lingering death, but you're committing suicide nonetheless. Ukraine, we're committing suicide by jumping off a building because the result will be World War III, general nuclear war, we're going to die. Israel, we're basically a diabetic who just continues to eat sugar. We'll live, we'll be sick, but we'll die eventually. Our body will fail. Israel is a poison to America and a poison to the world. Now, some people might be very insulted by this, but what else do you call a nation that literally defines itself as an apartheid state? A nation that's the fundamental premise is we are the chosen one, that we get to do what we do when we want to do it, how we want to do it, because God has chosen us to do it. They have no problem, no compunction, they have no problem with stealing the land of the Palestinians, with killing the Palestinians, with evicting them. Why? Because again, their religion teaches them that the Palestinians are human animals, less than humans. Therefore, their life doesn't count as much as a Jewish life. But you are a human animal to the Israelis. I am a human animal to the Israelis. Your co-host is a human animal to the Israelis. This is the fact. So what we've identified is that Israel is a cancer to humanity. It's a tumor that seeks to draw the life out of the host body, killing the body so that the tumor, can survive. That's the standard Israel has set, that nothing matters as much as Israel. And Israel will do everything necessary to sustain its existence as this Zionistic apartheid state, up to including committing genocide, mass murder, which the Israelis explain away as saying we have no choice because otherwise this thing we call Israel could not exist as we envision it to exist. It's a poison to America. It's destroying American democracy. When you have entities in the United States that lobby on behalf of the Israeli state to brag that they will spend up to $100 million to buy American congressmen whose the sole reason for supporting them is that they will have unapologetic support for Israel, that they will never question this continued support to Israel. And I need to remind people, Israel's not our friend. Why do we pretend they're our friends? They attacked the USS Liberty in June of 1967. Jonathan Pollard spied against the United States, gave the secrets to the Israeli government, who was directing his espionage. The Israeli government took these secrets and then gave them to the Soviets during the Cold War, to get favorable treatment on immigration. So Israel betrayed us. That's what all Israel does. The number one espionage threat to the United States of America is not China, is not Iran, is not Russia. It's Israel. Israel spies on America more than any other nation, which proves that Israel's not our friend. Israel is using us. It's a parasite using the host. And this will eventually kill America. The good news is, like a diabetic, you can go to a doctor and you can get diagnosed with a disease, and then you can take measures to reduce the impact of the disease and maybe even cure the disease. I don't think diabetes is curable, but we are waking up to the fact that Israel is killing us. Look at the next week in the city of Kazan, Russia, the BRICS summit will be convened. This is one of those world-changing events, one of those once-in-a-lifetime type historical events where we're looking at the transformation of history as we move from one era to the next. History books, if we all live and we avoid a nuclear war, history books will record the Kazan summit is one of the seminal moments in modern history where we transitioned away from a rules-based international order led by the American hegemon, and we went to a multilateral, multipolar world order, consensus-driven, where nations like Russia, China, India, Brazil, South Africa, and others will gather around and work together to solve problems. Instead of having America dictating solutions, the world will work together. This is a major deal. This transition. It changes everything about the world we live in. For the United States to adapt to this and not collapse, we need to slow down BRICS while we adjust. In order to slow down BRICS, though, we need to create a counter-gravitational pull to the gravitational pull that BRICS has that's luring nations to it. Right now, everybody's wanting to join BRICS. They're fleeing the rules-based international order.
150
Turkey.
countries, right?
Right. Now, we'll see how many of them get invited, but BRICS will come up with a partnership program for those who aren't full members, because they understand the importance of attracting this support. Ambassadors from American embassies around the world have written to the State Department saying, you might as well send me home. I'm doing no good here because nobody's listening to me because they don't trust us anymore because of our support for Israel. We've lost the global South because of Israel. At some point in time, America will wake up and say that the biggest problem in the world for America isn't Russia, isn't China, isn't BRICS, it's Israel. Israel is the biggest problem. And when that happens, then we will take the corrective course of action and alter our relationship. And I think you're starting to see that now. There's more support for a Palestinian state today in the United States than there has ever been. And the more the United States, the American people reflect on what Israel is doing and has done in Gaza, the genocide, the crimes they're committing of collective punishment in Lebanon, where they literally went in and dropped entire apartment buildings just to prove that they could, killing thousands of innocent civilians. This is no longer going to be tolerated in the United States. And once the American people wake up to how horrible the Israeli regime is, how horrible the Zionist state is, political pressure will be brought to bear on resolving this quandary. And you'll see the United States policies will adapt. They're starting to already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We talked about the two, hot area, like we talked about Ukraine, Russia, and Middle East. I think another place is like China and Taiwan, mainland China and Taiwan. Do you think Taiwan will be next Ukraine? A lot of people view Taiwan that way.
I mean, the only nation that can answer that question is China,
Mm-hmm.
the Chinese government. China has said for some time now that it seeks to resolve the issue of Taiwan and unification through peaceful means. And they mean that. They truly do mean that. But if Taiwan seeks to declare its independence, or if other nations treat Taiwan as an independent nation, China will have no choice but to use military force. Now, the only way Just remember this. The only reason why Ukraine is Ukraine today is because Russia did not go to war against Ukraine. Russia implemented a special military operation. That is completely different than war. If Russia went to war against Ukraine, Zelensky would be dead, the parliament would be destroyed, there would be no Ukrainian government, there would be no Ukrainian infrastructure, and the Russians would have come in and slaughtered the Ukrainian military in acts of violence that would have also killed tens of thousands of Ukrainian civilians. That's war. If you take a look at modern history, large-scale ground combat in a modern nation state generally results in a 1-to-1 casualty ratio. That is, for every dead combatant, there's a dead civilian. Right now in Ukraine, some estimates hold that the Ukrainians have suffered up to 700,000 dead soldiers. The Russians are estimated to have suffered around 100,000 dead soldiers. That's 800,000 dead people. How many civilians have been killed in Ukraine? And the number is in the low tens of thousands. So we already see that this is not a war, because if this was a war, you'd have 800,000 dead civilians, because that's what war does to civilians. Russia didn't go to war against Ukraine. Russia still is not at war against Ukraine. And this is why this conflict has dragged on. I think the big lesson for China is that if you're going to use military force to resolve the Taiwan issue, that you come in with overwhelming force up front, and you come in as violently as possible, that you make this war as short as possible. And I believe that's what China is going to do. I don't think China is going to blockade Taiwan for any length of time, because that sets up a potential existential struggle with the United States that could go nuclear. What China will do is make the Taiwan problem disappear in a matter of days. I believe that they have the ability to overwhelm Taiwan's missile defense systems, that they can, I apologize for my dogs, but I've got, I think, a UPS delivery victory.
I have a dog too, like he always bark.
Yeah, but again, this is a question for China, but if I were Chinese generals, if I were advising them, I would say that we go in violently, we destroy leadership targets, we destroy military targets, we destroy critical infrastructure targets, we prevent Taiwan from being able to survive, and that we flood the system with as many men as possible, and we overrun this island, and we take this island so that in less than a week's time, we turn to the United States and say it's over. There is no more Taiwan. There's nothing for you to defend. We own it all. This will kill a lot of people up front. But the number of dead that we suffer in a campaign like this is nothing compared to what's happened in Ukraine. And the level of violence is nothing compared to what Taiwan can survive a short, violent war with China, meaning that China will absorb a nation that will be relatively easy to rebuild. But if Taiwan goes through a 2-year war like Ukraine, there will be nothing left of Taiwan. China might not even want Taiwan after that, because it'll be totally destroyed. So my feeling is that China won't allow a Taiwan conflict to drag on. The longer that conflict goes, the more China plays to the strengths of the United States and its allies. The shorter the conflict is, the more China confronts the United States with a fait accompli. And I think China has the military capabilities to make this a very short but very violent war.
Don't let them listen to you. I mean, don't let them hear. So like your advice. Well, very insightful comments. Wait, do you have other questions to Scott?
I want to talk to Scott, because I know the last time, because Scott have something to upside. So I wanted to speak, talk to Scott. Please remember, you have very, very big life from Russian people. I live in Russia over 30 years. I know no one American person have so much life from Russian more than you.
Well, thank you very much. What I can say in return is that I will do my best to return the love. I'm an American. I love my country. This is my country. This is the country I will die for. But I'm also a human, and I'm a human who grew up as the son of a military officer, and I lived around the world, and I got to see different parts of the world. And I learned to appreciate other cultures, other religions, other languages, other people. For a long time, in my young adulthood, I viewed the Russians as my enemies, and I actually trained to go to war against Russia. I had an opportunity in the 1980s to participate in a treaty that eliminated an entire category of nuclear weapons, intermediate forces, and also some short-range missiles. And through that, I got to live in the Soviet Union for 2 years, and I got to meet the Russian people in the city of Votkinsk. And I can say that when that job ended, I no longer viewed the Russians as my enemies. I viewed them as my friends. And that's been my approach ever since, is to view the Russians as friends. But you have different kinds of friends. Everybody does. You have superficial friends, and then you have the friends that you can pour your heart and your soul out to. Until recently, Russians were my superficial friends. What I mean by that is that I read their history, I've read their literature, and I was curious about their country from a distance. But in this last 2 years, I've had the chance to travel to Russia and travel extensively in Russia. Thanks to a wonderful man named Alexander Zyrionov. He was my host. Unfortunately, today he is in prison in Novosibirsk under what I believe are false charges. I don't know. I'm not an expert on the Russian system. I know him. I know what kind of man he is, and I don't believe anything people say about him, and they haven't proven this yet they've kept him in jail. But I mention that because I'm frustrated. This is the man who introduced me to Russia. If the Russian people love me, then the Russian people must love Alexander Zyrionov, because he brought me to Russia, and he's the man who showed Russia to me. He's the man who opened the door and brought me inside and introduced me to, he didn't do it the easy way. The easy way would have said, Scott, come to Moscow. Moscow sells itself. It's a beautiful city. You don't have to work to sell Moscow. You just say walk, and people go, wow, what a great city. Or take me to St. Petersburg. St. Petersburg sells itself. You don't have to work. The first city he took me to was Novosibirsk. That's where I arrived in Russia. And he showed me Novosibirsk. And because I wasn't familiar with it, it's work. With Moscow, you've seen the photographs. St. Petersburg, you've seen the photo. Novosibirsk, you haven't seen any photographs. You're just seeing it for the first time. And what happens is, instead of viewing the city in terms of buildings and vistas, the city becomes a city of people, the people you meet. And then the people show you the things, but you identify the opera house not with the building, but with the director who gave you the tour. You go to the museum and you meet the people who run the museum, and they explain things to you. Then you go to restaurants and you meet them and you talk. You go to Banya. You know the Banya.
Yes.
Banya is
I
a
love
religious
Banya.
experience. Yes, and you do that. You walk with them, and then they show you their country, but you see it not from a book, but from the heart, the Russian soul. And that's what won me over, was the Russian people. The Russian people won me over with their absolute humanity. And then the Russian people are a reflection of their culture, of their history, of their religion, of their faith. And so you learn to appreciate that. And then they live in this wonderful, vast nation called the Russian Federation of different republics. I've been to, Irkutsk. I've been to the Buryat Republic. I've been to Udmurtia. I've been to Kalmykia. I've been to Tatarstan. I've been to Chechnya. I mean,
Yes.
my reception in Chechnya is legendary. I don't know why the Chechen people like me as much as they do, but they are wonderful people with a wonderful history, wonderful culture. And I just fell in love with Chechnya, like I fell in love with all of the Russian Federation. So the feeling I have is reciprocal to the Russian people. For all of the friendship and love that they've shown me, I want to show it back, and I will continue to try to do so, because going back to what we talked about, how do we prevent a nuclear war? One way to prevent war is to make sure that everybody understands that the last thing you want to do with the Russian people is go to war with them, not because you fear them, but because you love them, because they're your friends, because they're fellow humans, and that you want to be with them in peace. And that's the direction I want to take this.
Great comments, Scott. Thank you so much. I'm in tears. Yeah, I don't know what to say, but thank you very much for your time today. And
Well, thank you very much for having me. And I'll just leave it with this too. You know, the world is a big place, and one day I hope to be able to learn to love the Chinese people as much as I've learned to love the Russian people. Because in America today, we have the same problem. We are prejudiced against the Chinese. We don't understand the Chinese. We fear the Chinese. And I just feel that if we took the time to get to know the Chinese, like I have taken the time to get to know the Russians, that we would never want to have a conflict with the Chinese, that we would view them as our friends, people that we want to peacefully coexist with. And I feel that way about almost every place on the planet. That if we just take the time to learn about people, respect them, respect their history, their culture, etc., at the end of the day, we're the same people.
yes,
We all laugh, we all cry, we have the same emotions, we want the same things in life. And hopefully we all want good things, so we should be working with each other to make good things for everybody. So anyways, that's a little bit of a dream, but we'll see what the future holds.
I think that's what
Yes.
we are doing now, right? Today, right now, because I'm a Chinese American and Wei is a Chinese Russian, and you are American American, and we have
American.
yeah, we have audience all over the world, and you are loved by audience all over the world. And I just want you to know that.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I hope the Scott can next time and visit which our channel.
Absolutely. Where in Russia are you?
I am in St. Petersburg. Right now, I'm in the Krasnodar.
Oh, okay. So you're in the south. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes.
Well, the next time I come to Russia, maybe we can have this conversation live together.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, I'll go with you, Scott. Let's plan something together. Because I always wanted to visit Russia. I even asked Ryan, one of your hosts, how to go there, how to get a visa to Russia. So
Well, it's not impossible. So let's see what the future holds.
yeah, let's look
Yes,
forward to
yes.
it.
You
Well,
can.
thank you very much
I will meet you.
thank you
you.
very much for inviting me. It's an honor and privilege, and I hope to be able to speak to you again.
Okay.
Thank you very much for being here. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Oh.